expansiveness instead of limitations.
I think people would love to learn from you.
I have taken the irreversible step many, many times.
Right? You have to move forward.
I am going to bet on myself, and I'm going to go ahead and take a step.
Right. Hello, it's so great to be with you, your coach, Dr. Cynthia. I am so excited about today's guest, Amy Lessinger. She is the former president of RE/MAX. She led over 140,000 agents across 110 countries. She built and scaled a nearly $1 billion real estate brokerage. That's billion with a B. Nationally recognized productivity, leadership, and strategic execution. Trusted advisor and strategist to C-suite leaders and elite professionals, a keynote speaker, and the author of The Irreversible Step. So welcome, Amy. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Cynthia. I can't wait for our conversations because we have so much in common.
I know we do. We're totally in having the vibe. And call me Cynthia, please.
I love it.
Thank you. Tell me about this irreversible step. The thing that jumped out at me when you and I connected and I was reading everything is I'm like, that is provocative. I have to know more. What triggered that idea? Because I think that it's really the beginning of something magical for you.
Yeah, I think that, when I look at transformation and breakthrough in people, it always starts with a decision and action that goes with it. And really what makes transformation permanent, if you will, is when you embody it. Mm-hmm. And so, in looking back at my life, I realized that I had taken many irreversible steps along the way. And that's just what an irreversible step is. It's the moment that you say, I'm stepping into who I am now, and I'm not going back. And the reality is you don't want to go back.
Right. How do you know when it's time to take a step like that? I speak with and work with a lot of women in particular that are afraid to take that first step. What's the sign or the signals?
Sure. I think so many people have something I call it the whisper. It's that whisper, it's that voice that sort of you keep pushing away, you keep maybe circling around, you keep saying maybe someday, or I should just be grateful. I have an incredible life. And what I've built is so incredible that, I'm going to lose it if I take this step. That's a false belief. But nonetheless, it's just that it can be a quiet voice, a nagging voice, a whisper. Sometimes it's really loud, and sometimes it masks itself in, just sort of, I know something's off, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that I want that's different.
Yeah. When we studied women around the globe, we found restlessness. Mm-hmm. And as you talk about the whisper, it's that feeling of uncomfortable or stuck or stagnant. And where you continue with that is it's the whisper that says you've graduated or it's time, right? Why you mentioned fear, but what are the other things that hold people in general back from answering that call?
I think fear is a big one, but I also think that there's this underlying belief that there's many of them, but this is, one of the dominant ones that I see. There's an underlying belief that in order to have the life you want, you have to downgrade the one you have. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got somebody who has reached the pinnacle of their business or their career, yet really what's kind of calling them next is maybe opening that business that they've wanted to open up. So maybe they want to open up that restaurant, for example. Well, there's a belief there that it's like, oh, well, I'm starting over. And, now I have to climb a whole nother mountain again. And I have to give up everything that I have now in order to pursue that. And then what I'm going to pursue is actually less than what I have now. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons why I built the framework and I built the system, because it takes you through these kinds of moments so that you can actually honor them, look at them and say, is that really true? What's really possible? What if it was better than you ever imagined that it could be? I think that the fear in our brain, and you know this, Cynthia, is, it's designed to keep us safe, but we don't have to let it lead.
Right.
That's the important part.
Yeah, you triggered something. I was coaching a woman recently who, in her current position, is pretty disenchanted. She's the culture shifting. There's just a lot of things that are making her kind of unhappy. And I asked her, are you looking at other positions? Are you looking outside the organization? And her answer was, well, I'm a little afraid to do that because what if it's worse?
Right.
Right?
Right.
What is your advice to the person listening who is feeling the whisper? Maybe it's a holler, right? Maybe it's a loud knock on the door. It's not even a whisper anymore. What is your advice to that person that's listening that says, I hear that, but boy, I'm afraid?
Well, there's 5 steps that we move through in order to get to the irreversible step. The first one is tell the truth. And I know it seems simple, but it's really hard to do that, is to actually figure out, what do I really want? Who am I? What is this next chapter about? So that's step 1. And then to answer your question, step 2 is explore what's possible. We get into this either or thinking, the black and white thinking of, it's going to be this way. And so by asking ourselves better questions, our brain comes up with better answers and it repositions ourselves. And so, she's created a narrative in her mind that, it actually is going to be worse. But you can move forward and say, is that really true? What if something else was possible? What if it turned out better than you actually expected? What would it actually look like? And so if they can start to see a different picture and they can start to position it a little bit differently, now you can start to see what's possible before you, whereas before you just had shut the door before you even cracked it open to look and see what's inside.
Right. It's like when you get that phone call from the headhunter or what have you, and it's like,
right.
Well, I'm pretty comfortable, so I'm not going to take the phone call. My advice has always been, take the phone call. Right?
Absolutely.
What do you have to lose? What do
Sure.
you have to lose? Because the other thing that I hear you talking about is you're still in control.
100%.
Right. You can explore the possibility
That's right.
and redirect that narrative and think it through. And it's not like you're jumping in with both feet. There's a process to get there.
Right. I always say it like this. It's like, putting a puzzle together, right? What do you do when you first start to put the puzzle together? You put the box on the table and you look at the big picture.
Right.
Well, if you haven't explored what's possible, you can't see a big picture. You're only looking at one little small portion of the entire puzzle. So part of exploring what's possible is putting all the pieces on the table together and seeing if or how they might fit. And maybe not all of them have a place in the picture. But by laying them all out, you take back your agency to create your own future. And you start to look at, expansiveness instead of, kind of limitations.
Right. And to take your metaphor further, you put the corner pieces in first, right?
Right.
So you do the border first, which is still not a complete commitment.
Right.
You're saying, let me see how this fits together. Let me see what this looks like and how this feels along the way. But so many times, the person listening, myself, at times we say, I don't even want to get the box out. Right. I don't even want to look at the box, much less open and look at the
For
pieces.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
You've had pivots in your incredibly successful career. When did you feel some of those whispers and how did that show up for you? I think people would love to learn from you.
I think one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about this work is that I have taken the irreversible step many, many times. And this is the framework and the system that I wish that I would have had, yet it's also the one that I've used over and over again without realizing it. And so that's why it means so much to me. I think the first really, really pivotal, I've had many, but the really pivotal one is when I chose to sell the brokerage that we had built. We started it in 2005, and the market did nothing but crash for the next 5 years after that. We had 2 little kids. We had a 10,000 square foot building, and everything was collapsing around us. Agents, their business fell apart overnight. Their clients were losing their homes, and it was just really, really difficult. Yet I knew that if I wanted to succeed, that I was going to have to build success for others. And in doing so, would build our success. So that's how we did it. I just poured myself into learning everything that I could learn about human potential, human performance, and helped my agents produce no matter what the market conditions they were in. And by the time we sold the brokerage, we were like number 42 in the nation across all brands for per agent productivity, meaning we had the most productive agents, in the top 50 in the United States, which was incredible. But here's the deal. I had done all of that work. I was so in love with the business. And then about 3 to 4 years before I sold it, I started getting that whisper. I was not only burned out, but I was tired. I was unfulfilled. I felt like my purpose and my meaning had sort of lost its luster. I still loved the people, but I felt like I wanted more, and I didn't know what that was. And so frankly, I held on to that company for longer than I should have because I didn't know who I was without it, Cynthia. And I think that's a trap that so many of us fall into, is we wrap up who we are in what we do. And I certainly felt that. And so, it cost me in many ways. And I think that's another thing that we don't talk about enough is, what is it costing you to stay stuck? What is it costing you to stay where you are? Your body, your soul, yourself has said, I'm unhappy and I know it. And I know something's off. But when we just keep pushing that down, there's a cost that we pay for that. And so I decided to take an irreversible step. And that was, I committed to selling the company without knowing what I was going to do next. Talk about scary.
That's very scary.
It was very scary. And it was like, oh my gosh. But I also knew that I couldn't keep doing it, and that I shouldn't keep doing it, and that it deserved to go on and grow and be built and flourish in the way that I always intended. And it did. So I think, that really was the first major irreversible step where I said, I'm not looking back. And I signed the contract without knowing what was next. That's an irreversible step,
That is a big irreversible step. Yes.
Sure. And some of them aren't as big. Some of them are, it's a public declaration of, what? I've decided after 20 years, in this, profession or role, that I am going to go ahead and open the business that I've always wanted to open. It could be a public declaration. It could be a hard conversation that you've been avoiding to reset with a relationship that's gone, off the tracks. It could be you sign the lease. It could be you order the moving truck. All those things, it's the step that you take that helps you embody and become the person that you're meant to be next. And that's what opened the door to me ultimately joining RE/MAX headquarters and then becoming the president of RE/MAX. So had I not taken the step, so many people think that I can't take the step until I have this perfect plan, but there's no space for anything to breathe. And so, sometimes it is, I am going to bet on myself, and I'm going to go ahead and take a step, and I'm going to allow something to unfold because it needs the space to do it.
Right. Yeah. I really loved what you said too about it doesn't have to be massive. Right?
No.
Because I think the person that's listening might feel like, well, I'm not in a situation where I can just leave my job and, hope for the best, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody's situated differently. But to your point, it might not be leave the job, but as you and I, and where our framework and our theories and our passion overlaps, is I'm all about start working on your future today. So make the decision that you're going to leave the company. If that's ultimately
that's what you want to do,
what makes sense, right? You're feeling the whisper, the call, the push. But but the step might be make the decision that that's what's going to
Right.
happen. And then where our methodologies sync up, it's put the resume together, put your aspirations into the universe, let people know that you have an interest in something else, because
Right.
that is the momentum to get you there. But to your point, it's you have to get off jump, right?
Right.
You have to move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that once you make that decision, and that actually, ironically, is, step 3 of the irreversible step, which is pick your path. What is the direction that you want to go? And so it's like, okay, I know that I want something different in my career, or I am going to commit to resetting my health because I've had a health crisis, or there's a relationship that I know needs to shift and change. It's what path are we going down? And then you pick. So you do make a decision about the direction, but here's the key. Most people get stuck and scared there. They go, ooh, that's too scary. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. All we're doing is standing at a crossroad, a fork in the road. Yes. And we're looking at, I can continue down the same path, or I can choose to take a step or 2 or 3 down this new path. That's all pick your path means. It's just, we're going to start moving this direction, because if we start to do too much, that's when fear takes over, the brain takes over, and that's when we shut down. And so we have to be careful, that we don't let fear lead when we finally say, you know what? Yeah, I am going to dip my toe in this water because this matters to me. And I'm going to set down it needing to be a perfect plan. Otherwise, you just sometimes won't move. People get paralyzed by too much.
I love the phrase, don't let fear lead. I think that there's so much there, right? That's such a powerful statement. And it's interesting. I want to kind of harken back to the impact of staying too long, or not answering the call.
Being stuck.
Right? Being stuck. And allowing that to, when you said, I probably let that go a couple of years longer than I should. I can appreciate that in my career, where I wanted it so desperately to work because, quite frankly, it was comfortable. It lined up well in a lot of ways. It was going to be my path to my encore. But if I'm really honest with myself, the writing was on the wall. I was in rinse and repeat. I was restless for quite some time, and it does take its toll. Say more about either how it's taken, how it showed up for you in terms of really answering, I should have done that maybe sooner, and how you've seen that in other women and others that you've coached.
I see it in so many people. And I think that's another reason why I'm just driven to do this work, because I really believe that you should live a life by design and not default. You're going to go through life. You may as well design it. And so if you're stuck or unhappy or unfulfilled, get curious about that. What's this about? Interesting. Okay. And that's why I built the system, because it's a system designed to help you break free of everything you're carrying, because you know as well as I do that when you carry something for too long, it does not get lighter. It gets heavier and heavier and heavier. Right. And it shows up in forms of stress, self-abandonment. You start to not be able to sleep right. You don't take care of yourself. You're not eating well. You're not exercising. All of those things start to snowball. And pretty soon you look back and you go, whoa, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I'm numb. I literally, I lack focus, whatever it is, however it's coming forward for you, that's the cost. The other thing that I learned the hard way is it costs you in terms of your relationships. You're not able to really show up and be your best self and your best person because, you're denying something that wants to come forward and needs to come forward and emerge in yourself. And I think that that's, something that people really forget. Like we said earlier, there's a cost. There's a cost to staying stuck, and people don't think about that.
It's interesting because there's 2 different women that I'm presently coaching, and they've come through a crossroads. both of them happen to be different from actually the example I said earlier. Both of them are in their respective organizations and they know it's time to move on. And by the way, that's not always the situation, right? For the person listening that says, I love my job and I'm happy where I am and I love my boss, this isn't about only related to job changes. And I think we'll pick up on
Correct.
that. But
there's so many categories.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. But but what I have witnessed in both of these women that were feeling stuck, stagnant, disenchanted, as they've started to focus on what is that your framework, irreversible step, and from my framework, how do I choose my next? So how do I answer that? What is it? I had a coaching session even today, and the woman looks lighter, brighter, fresh, and she's still in her same job, mind you, but she's putting a plan in place to move to her next. So what is that? It's empowering. It's liberating. I now have my agency back. She now has her agency back because she's in control. She doesn't feel trapped.
Correct.
And I said to her, you look so bright and fresh and glowing. And she said, it's so funny you say that. I had dinner with a friend this week and they said the same thing. She said, I'm really at peace. I'm still working for the same person, but I have a plan.
Right. And what's funny is that step 4. I call it build your bridge.
There you go.
Because what I know about, high performers, successful people is they do want a plan. And so there is an appropriate time to build a plan. And let me tell you, it is not a perfect plan. It is not the plan that has every box checked. It is not the plan that is totally complete. Once I do this, I'm going to do these next 5 things. That's too overwhelming and people won't act on that. This is moving your big rocks. What are the things that I really need to get done in order to get me from where I am now to where I'm going? And that includes a resource audit, because so many times we think we're starting from scratch. We're starting over. No, you're not. You get to take all of your experience, all of the things that have built you to be who you are today with you to what's next. So you're not starting from scratch. You're starting way up here. Starting from scratch is when you graduate from college and you take your first job. That's from scratch.
Exactly.
Most people are not in that position who are finding themselves at these kinds of crossroads. They've got experience under their belt, and so they get to take it with them.
And transferable experience, would you agree?
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't also mean that exactly what you've done is the only thing that you can continue to do. It can be, what about that experience is transferable?
Exactly. And, like somebody who says, well, I've never run a restaurant before. It's like, have you looked at yourself? You're running a publicly traded company and you have, $1 billion P&L.
Right.
I think you're okay. I think you've got some really great skills that maybe a lot of chefs that started, in their early career and did not understand how to run the actual business, wish they would have had when they were building. So it's, you're not starting from scratch. You literally take everything with you, but, building your bridge and making that plan is a critical step to make sure that you actually move forward and you transform.
Yeah, that's so important. And, I think for the woman who's listening, who has children.
Oh, yes.
I mean, let's talk about the experience gained in that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I watched my daughter with my 3 grandchildren, and the last 2 are 14 months apart, 2 little girls. And talk about somebody that has amazing time management, amazing conflict resolution, right? Amazing problem solving, you name it. I mean, the skills and talent that it takes to run a household are so often overshadowed that people, I've been out of the workforce for a while. My daughter Jordan just went back in the workforce, and we had to have a conversation about, you haven't been out of the workforce. You've just been working very differently, but think of what you've been doing.
That's right.
For the last 4 years and how applicable that is Yeah.
And you bring up such a good point, Cynthia, the imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
When we evolve and we move to our next best self, often that involves like, I don't know who this is. I don't have everything I need to be this person or become this person.
Mm-hmm.
When we decided to build our brokerage, we didn't know the recession was coming. I had not, run a brokerage like that before. I became that person through moving down that path. You don't become first.
Right.
You become through it. I think that's the most important thing that people need to understand. And so for your daughter, going back into the workforce, she might have had a little bit of that hesitation at first. And it's like, no, you're not her yet,
right.
But you're moving down the path and you're going to become her now because you took an irreversible step. You took the job.
Right. Oh my gosh. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Let's step back. We were talking about, I want to really speak to the person who's listening that says, so it's climbing the corporate ladder without breaking a heel,
Yes.
right? As women who have reached a particular level of success, we've probably learned, I'll speak for myself. I've learned much through the mistakes I've made.
Yes.
More than anything, right? The woman who loves her job, loves her boss, happy with the culture of her company, wants more, right? Sees that there's more and wants to continue to aspire. How can she relate the irreversible step to her situation today?
It's funny. I was working with one of my clients in a strategy session, and he had a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I understand that, maybe that's not applicable to the scenario that you mentioned, but he wanted more. But he didn't think that he maybe could deliver on that next level of leadership. So we worked through the irreversible step framework and system. And when we came through the what's possible, we discovered a both and. He thought he was going to have to move and take the next position and sort of be tapped for that. Instead, his next step was brainstorming, strategizing with his boss about everything that he saw that was possible. And so not only did he earn that promotion, but it was a true both and, because he was leading the group that he was currently leading, transitioning a new leader, and leading the next group. So he could transition with support instead of just being kind of thrust into this huge role that he had never played before. And it felt much more like a stepping stone and a bridge instead of like jumping off of a cliff, in terms of relocating the family and doing all of those things. And so I think what I would say to that woman is explore what's really possible. Because sometimes we think, oh, well, my evolution is this next slot, this next position. Well, is it? What else could it be? How else could you have upward mobility? Can you create it for yourself? What position does the company need that doesn't exist that you fill beautifully? And the other thing that I wouldn't get stuck with is this thing. So it's like, what I hear in that scenario, which is perfectly okay and acceptable, is I'm comfortable here.
Right.
I like my boss. I like the company. That's fantastic. And I would never tell anybody, that doesn't matter. That absolutely matters. But are you only thinking about it on those terms? If you were to explore what's possible, is there an alternative for you where you have a more expansive road ahead of you, where you can build what's next? And like your boss and like the company, but does it have to be just this? So, that's why explore possibilities becomes so important, because we literally just look at it as that either or. Well, I really like it here, but this is all that there is here. Okay. But that's a problem for you because you want upward mobility. So do you want to stay within their confines or do you want to build yours?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in what you said. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of the both and. Like I live in the both and. I refer to the both and all the time.
Me too.
You cannot live in the either or world. It doesn't work for me. several things I just want to highlight. So one is, and I kind of refer to it as a career lattice, right, instead of a career ladder, because oftentimes we think that there's only one path to whatever it is that we seek to achieve. And I use the phrase, like a beautiful pair of shoes, we can be lured in by the glamour of what we see, but if they don't fit, they're really uncomfortable. So
that's a good analogy.
Right? So fair, we can relate. So understanding that there's lots of ways to get to where you're going. It starts with really understanding your personal sense of purpose and values and mission.
That's right.
And not, it's helpful. It's important that you align to the organization. If you're not an entrepreneur and you're working for someone else, it's important that you align to the mission and values of the organization. But what's equally important is that you know your own, right?
That's right.
Your non-negotiables.
Right.
Because when it starts to feel uncomfy, I find that it's because it starts to feel like a disconnect. But if you have never articulated your purpose and your values, you have nothing to bump it up against, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, that's something that I hear a lot, in terms of the things that are sometimes asked of people in that environment do sort of violate, their values. And yet in the name of the job, they do it.
Right.
And, many, many people have been there. That's not an anomaly, but if you find yourself doing it over and over and over again, that's where you start to get that. It gets really heavy.
Right.
And so I think the biggest thing is you've got to look at your own values and say, are we aligned, with the direction that the company's going per se, or my direction?
Yes.
And I think that's important.
And you become the imposter, right? You legitimately become the imposter when you are becoming something that's not true to yourself. Sure. I think your example with the gentleman that is the client is very on point, because we both know that imposter syndrome is not unique to women. Sure. Statistically, it shows up a bit more. We tend to, over-index on performance rather than potential, and our male counterparts. And I always say, let's steal a page out of their playbook, right? Like, they raise their hand and say, "Put me in, coach. I'll figure it out when I get there." For the most part, but there are those exceptions. For the man who's listening, the curious ally that is listening, and thank you, curious ally, for tuning in. How could this framework help? And women are allies as well, but for the man who's listening that says, I really want to ally for women who are seeking roles greater in their organization, how can they help the woman to use this framework to encourage them, to support them?
I think a couple of things. The first thing is just kind of sort of glaring is one thing that is not helpful is don't expect a woman to behave like a man. That in order for them to succeed, that in order for women to succeed, that they have to act like a man. I think that we're well past that. And so I think that's one area that I might call out. Yes. That there can be multiple styles and multiple ways to get to the same outcome. And so leaving space for that. But also, I think, being more outspoken about truly the impact and the opportunity within the organization, and really helping draw out how, whether you're a man or a woman, you can be more impactful. Those hard conversations, I think, are so meaningful. I had many over the course of my career, and I always rooted in, I'm trying to help drive your performance and your potential. This is not about, I don't like you, I think you're doing a terrible job, all of those things. It's about, you can achieve at a higher level. I believe you can. Here's your superpowers, and here are some of the areas that might be holding you back. And here's the opportunity, if you choose, to take a look at those and realign your skill set. Mm-hmm. that you stand to have that biggest growth. And so I think that's what championing another person is, whether it's a man or a woman.
Right.
And I think that the framework really, really helps with that, because you can walk them through, what do you want in your career? What do you want to, bring to the company? What are your superpowers? So what's possible for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's literally tell the truth about what do you actually want in the company, saying that out loud. And for, men or women who are supervising lots of people, you need to know those things, because it helps you help them perform at a higher level.
Yeah.
And then from there, what's the choice? And then it's build the bridge, and then it's what's your step. So it really does apply to so many avenues, including companies that are trying to figure out how they can evolve. And so, same thing. What's true for the company? What's possible for the company? What direction is the company going to choose to go? What's the bridge that we're going to build to get there? And then what's the step we're going to take so we never go back?
That's great. It's utilization, and that is fascinating as well. I love the notion of how you can take the 5 steps as a leader and use them to have a dialogue, a career conversation.
Absolutely.
With the person that works for you. We know through our data that women around the globe, the women we studied around the world, are conditioned to put their head down, work hard, and wait to get tapped. And so going back to your point about don't expect women to behave like men. Yes, we've talked about it probably ad nauseum over the many decades. I'm not sure that it's completely stuck yet. And I don't even say that from a point of judgment. I say it from a point of missed opportunity, because here's where I think that links up. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. For me, what that says is, if I am a leader, and I'm going to suggest for just a moment that I'm the man that's listening, and I lead a number of people, men and women, it's possible, just based on the data, that if there's an opening for a higher level position, a promotional opportunity, data specifically would suggest that the men on his team will likely raise their hand, wish to apply, put their aspirations out there. The women statistically on their team, who may be equally qualified, more qualified, who knows, and have just as much interest, may not necessarily raise their hand because of the conditioning that says, I've been working my butt off. I have my labor and my output and my quality is the example of my worth. So I should get tapped based on what I've done without having to say anything, right? And what we forget as women is people are not mind readers. And so what this framework does, in addition to the woman who's listening that says, give me those 5 steps and let me walk through what my irreversible step is, it also is really, in my opinion, a plea to the men and women who are leading people to say, tap that woman on the shoulder on your team and say, let's have a career conversation. Right?
Absolutely.
What do you want? What is possible? What is the bridge? What is the step? I think I missed a decision point, but in that process. And so it really has a lot of tentacles in terms of how this can be used.
Oh, it really does. I mean, and that's the beauty of it, is I wanted something very simple, but yet would lead you to a path of that irreversible step, because that's where the transformation is. And I wanted it to be universal, to be able to be used for an individual, a company, and now in leadership as well. So I think, I love that you recognize it.
Yes.
And I think to the women listening as well, just as we don't want men to expect us to, behave like men, that, you don't get what you don't ask for. And so I firmly believe, and that's something that I have always done throughout my career, is I've been very explicit about, what do I want? Where am I going? What's expected? And so I think that there's space there. You can stand in your power, that it isn't your output, it's your impact. And I think that's something really important that we have to remember, because it's, my own coach, I've been coached for many, many years. She just put out something about, effort versus essence, that we're trained to kind of overwork, put our heads down, work. But are you bringing the essence of who you are so you can drive bigger impact? That's very different than just overwork and producing. It's very, very different. And how can there be ease over effort?
It makes me think of we use oftentimes volume versus value.
Right.
And it's similar, right? As women,
Absolutely.
we're so quick to raise our hand and be part of the team and help others and do all the things. And sometimes we're often overwhelmed, overloaded, taking care of everyone else around us.
Right.
And we have a tendency to take on more volume than value.
Right.
And so really thinking about, is that thing that I'm taking on, that I'm raising my hand, that I'm volunteering for, additive
Right.
to value, to the essence of who I am?
Right.
Or am I just layering on more to my already busy plate?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too that does is it takes you further and further away from your purpose and having kind of soul in your work.
Right.
That's another big crossroad category that we have. And that is, soul and purpose and identity. That's where, career burnout happens. That's where, the 7-year itch happens in people's career. And so, we have to be mindful of what we're saying yes to, because it means that we're giving, and we have a finite amount of energy. And so are we going to give it over here, or are we going to reserve it for what actually ignites us? I heard this great sentence not too long ago, and it was, let's drop the have tos. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And so it's like, cancel that meeting that you didn't want to go to anyway, that isn't delivering any value to anybody, but it's a have to. You are empowered to be more impactful. And I think that when you do something like that, you're showing that impact matters much more than effort.
Absolutely.
I canceled that meeting because it's depleting the team and it's taking away time where we could actually produce the result we're going after, instead of talking about producing the result we're going after.
Right.
Yeah.
Or don't attend the meeting that you're not really going to be present for.
Sure.
How many meetings do we log in because it's on our calendar and we have to? And then we spend the entire time multitasking, not listening, because in the reality, we really don't have to.
Right.
And if we're really asking ourselves the question of, can I be there and be fully present? Because this is a meaningful use of my time and I have something valuable to add and something valuable to gain. And if the answer is no, then maybe that's the thing we don't have to do and we take off our calendar. Yeah, absolutely.
Give yourself a permission. You're a grown-up adult and you know exactly what you need to do versus what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'll say it even more directly. Amy and I give you permission.
Yes, we do.
We give you permission to take the stuff off that is not adding value to you and then by extension, anybody else, and focus your time on the valuable things that bring out the essence. I love that word. Now you have a 6-week transformation program, a transformative experience. I'm super excited about that. Tell me more about that. And for the women out there who's going, this is resonating, this is speaking volumes to me, I need to take the irreversible step. Talk to me about the program and how do people get involved?
Well, thank you for mentioning it. Our next group is starting the first week of October, and it is designed, we just unpacked a lot. in the 5 steps. There's a lot of framework and tools that I have to help people get very, very clear, where it's like, I see it, I understand it, but it requires a bit more of a deep dive. And so that's the 6-week transformation experience. And we go deep, we go fast, and I don't mean too fast, but it's like we've belabored this point in our minds long enough. Let's get actually down to, the brass tacks of moving toward what we want and designing the outcome. So it's an incredible experience. And the next one's launching in the first week of October. I have a very exciting trip that's coming up. So that's why we're launching in October. I'm going to Africa. I'm going to finally do a bucket list. It's been on my bucket list for 20 years. I'm going to go safari by horseback, which is really exciting.
I am so jealous. That sounds amazing. Safari by horseback. I wish you needed a +1. I would be on the way.
Oh my gosh,
I assume that's virtual.
It's a live, but it's live. So it's me live. It's not pre-recorded. We will do deep work and walk out with a transformative experience. And if somebody wants more information, they can go to amylessinger.com. There's a whole host of tools and ideology there, and you can always reach out to me directly. I'm on all the social platforms as well.
amylessinger.com. And you also do keynotes. You do a lot of work on stages for associations, for corporations, on leadership, on transformation, on the irreversible step. So we want to make sure that the person listening that has an event coming up or something that's coming up, even in 2026, I assume your calendar's open for next year, to get those booked as well. Before I kind of summarize, I've been taking copious notes. I've learned a lot. So thank you so much. And it's fun to see the synergy between our work. What, if you just had to boil it down, what is the one thing that you want the person listening to know?
You are not designed to stay the same. You're just not. And that's why that nagging voice, that whisper, that thing you've been circling, or that you just know something's off, that's why it's there. That's literally yourself talking to you saying, time to grow. And so it's your next opportunity for growth, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's totally normal. It doesn't mean that you're broken, and it does not mean that you have to wreck your whole world and your whole life and settle for less than you have now. What if it was even better than what you have now, and you could have the life of your dreams and, really have fulfilling purpose that's aligned with what you're doing?
Oh my gosh, wouldn't it be an amazing world if all of us lived into and leaned into that calling, that whisper, and lived into our fullest potential?
You have gifts to give to the world.
We do. We do. And a responsibility. Absolutely. I believe a responsibility to live into our vast potential. And there's joy in that, right? Not only do other people experience joy, but there's so much joy for ourselves. A couple of things that I want you to hear as you've been listening, a couple of phrases that Amy mentioned. Don't let fear lead. I think that is so powerful. Live a life by design, not by default. And I think you just mentioned that. It's that we were designed to continue to grow, to be curious. You're not starting from scratch. You're bringing all of this beautiful lived experience with you into your next. You don't become first, you become through it. Explore the possibilities, and you are empowered to be more impactful. Amy, this was such a joy having you. I know that there are so many men and women who are benefiting from the irreversible step and your courage that you have had over your career to listen and answer the call, and to make those bold moves and to take those big steps. And you're an inspiration to me and others. So thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, that means the world, Cynthia. Thank you so much. I just love the opportunity to come and speak with you and your audience. I admire your work, and the work you're doing is really pivotal. pivotal.
Thank you
It's really pivotal. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Amy Lessinger, everybody. So thank you for listening. Tune in next time and be sure to share our podcast with friends and loved ones so that they too can live into their greatest potential. Until next time, you've got this. Well, that concludes this episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel with your coach, Dr. Cynthia. Congratulations on taking time to invest in yourself. I realize how precious your time is, and I feel very privileged that you took a little bit of it to spend with me. If you liked what you heard and it resonated today, I invite you to follow, like, and drop a comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure and share with a friend or loved one that you think needs to hear this message. Until next time, remember to boldly invest in your future today.